This week, as we are preparing, I'm not preparing, but our communications department is preparing for the second half of our bicentennial exhibit. Max Orenstein, our director of communications, finally received documents from the Martin Luther King Library. Among them was a letter from Rabbi William Berkowitz dated July 31st, 1962, inviting Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. to be honored here with the annual Brotherhood Award, an award established in 1947 for an eminent citizen who rendered outstanding service in the field of interfaith and intergroup understanding. Included in all these documents was the correspondence back and forth. Of course, there was no internet or anything, so every little detail of the visit was in another letter. And it also included excerpts from Dr. King's remarks delivered in February 1963. That's basically 60 years from the day, entitled Moral and Religious Imperatives for Brotherhood. He begins with a moral clarity that feels as urgent now as it did then. There must be a recognition of the sacredness of the human personality. Deeply rooted in our political and religious heritage is the conviction that every man is an heir to a legacy of dignity and worth. This innate worth, referred to in the phrase, the image of God, is universally shared in equal portions by all men. It was a different time, right? There is no graded scale of essential worth. Every human being has etched in his personality the indelible stamp of the Creator. And he concludes his remarks with a reminder that holiness is never solitary. The universe is so structured that things do not quite work out rightly if men are not diligent in their concern for others. The self cannot be self without others, without other selves. I cannot reach fulfillment without thou. All life is interrelated. All men are caught in an inescapable network of mutuality, tied in a single garment of destiny. Dr. King gives us a vision of the human being as a vessel, each person bearing the indelible stamp of the Creator, every life sacred, each self incomplete without the other. Holiness lives first in the human personality, and yet he also insists that we do not stand alone. We are bound together. We build communities and institutions, movements, structures meant to serve that sacred human core. And that tension between the sacred human vessel, the individual, and the structures we build around it is not new. The sages, too, were captivated by what human beings can create together. In the Talmud, Sukkah 51b declares, one who did not see the celebration of the Simchat Beit HaShoeva, the place of the drawing of the water, never saw true Simcha in their life. One who did not see Yerushalayim in its glory never saw a beautiful city. One who did not see the temple in its constructed state never saw a magnificent structure. The rabbis marvel at grandeur, at collective joy and ritual, at architectural beauty, at the magnificence of sacred space. They understand that human beings bound together can create something breathtaking. But as we will see, they also understand some danger there, because the question is not simply whether we can build something magnificent. The question is, what is the magnificence meant to serve? And so the Talmud continues, as if to test its own celebration of grandeur. After praising Yerushalayim and the Beit HaMikdash, the temple, it turns to another structure, far from Sion, far from home, a synagogue in Alexandria of Egypt. And there, the question of what we build and what our building does to us becomes even sharper. The Talmud continues, Rabbi Yehuda said, One who did not see the great synagogue of Alexandria of Egypt never saw the glory of Israel. They said that its structure was like a large basilica with a colonnade within a colonnade. At times, there were 600,000 men and another 600,000 men in it, twice the number of those who left Egypt. In it, there were 71 golden chairs corresponding to the 71 members of the Great Sanhedrin, each of which consisted of no less than 21,000 talents of gold. And there was a wooden platform at the center. The sexton of the synagogue would stand on it with scarves in his hands. And because the synagogue was so large and the people could not hear the communal prayer, when the prayer leader reached the conclusion of a blessing requiring the people to answer amen, the sexton waved the scarf and all the people would answer amen. And the members of the various crafts would not sit mingled. Rather, the goldsmiths would sit among themselves, and the silversmiths among themselves, and the blacksmiths among themselves, and the coppersmiths among themselves, and the weavers among themselves. And when a poor stranger entered there, he would recognize who plied to his craft, and he would turn to join them. And from there, he would secure his livelihood, as well as the livelihood as the members of his household, as his colleagues would find him work in that craft. It's an extraordinary image in all its grandeur, not only the enormity of the structure, but the affirmation of a thriving community, more populated than those who left Mitzrayim, more populated than those who stood on Sinai, the affirmation that the covenant was alive and well. It even honored the great Sanhedrin. Aside from the clear financial success of the community in order to create such a structure, the community is also modeled with economic dignity, so that artisans seated by their crafts are set up that way so that persons who were struggling to find their place in Parnassah and their livelihood could find it easily when they walked into the synagogue. What an expression of pride in knowing how to build not only a place, but a community, from our humble beginnings in Mitzrayim to traveling in the desert with the Mishkan, to exile in times of abundance and in times of danger. However, the Talmud takes a dramatic turn. It says the following. Abaye said, all the people who congregated in that synagogue were killed by the Alexander the Great of Macedonia. What is the reason that they were punished and killed? It is due to the fact that they violated the prohibition with regard to Mitzrayim in this verse. Lo tosifun lashuv b'derech hazeh od. You shall not go back that way again, as it says in Deuteronomy. And they returned to Mitzrayim. Since they established their permanent place of residence in Mitzrayim, in Egypt, they were punished. It's a stunning turn of events. Aside from the profound problem of this theology, I'm not going to go there, which is very deeply profound, that people will get punished for something like that. The rabbis, I think, are asking a question and probing a concern. How can something so beautiful and lauded ultimately be something so spiritually dangerous? It's not like the building or the synagogue was immoral. It's not that it was assimilated. It wasn't corrupt. Just, it seems, too settled and comfortable in Mitzrayim, and perhaps not even recognizing the narrowness, the vulnerability, the Mitzrayim right outside their door. So I just want to stop for a minute just to make sure people understand that the rabbis are accusing the people, saying that the Torah says that they should never go back to Mitzrayim, right? Like that's whether you want to say it's a bad place or it's not a place that you should go back to. And because these people established a thriving community in Mitzrayim, which is, and all the surface looks amazing, in fact, right? And then the Talmud kind of, Abaye says, no, no, no. So I want to open it up for 2 minutes to say, what's wrong with going back to Mitzrayim? What's the risk? At least, like, what's at stake? Why do the rabbis have an inkling that something is bad about that? Why do they apply the verse in this way? Thoughts? Yes, Joy.
It's a narrow place. You cannot spiritually grow there if you stay there.
Okay, so Mitzrayim represents from Sar narrowness. And if you go back there, there's no sense of potentially spiritually thriving, even though on the surface, it looks as if they are thriving. Great. Yeah, Martha.
It feels like it's a reversal of the foundation of the people. The whole business is that God took us out of Egypt. So go back.
Okay, so Martha said that it's like a reversal of the whole intention of the plot, right? God took us out of Egypt, so to go back seems kind of hafuch. It seems upside down in some way, or going backwards, you could say. It's a return to part of the story that we don't want to return to. Any other thoughts? Yes, Ephraim. Conflict is because they battled other people and they would be embattled in that space too. They're not safe. It doesn't provide them a sense of potentially the kind of the promise of being their own people in their own land, potentially. Yes. Okay, so Donna says maybe it's like, this is like shot rabbis, which is, the verse says, don't go back, and they went back. I would just say they apply verses very, willy-nilly in a certain sense, so that feels not satisfying for me, even though I understand the logic of it. Yeah, Mark.
So it seems dismissive of God's plan and a bit ungrateful, and also God just killed a lot of people so the Israelites could get out of it.
Okay, so it's dismissing of God's plan, and God went through a lot of efforts to sacrifice people along the way to make us have that kind of redemption. How can we go back? Yeah, Jerry.
There's a problem with this theology because when Israel went out of Egypt, they fell into the house of slavery. When they were back, it was not a house of slavery.
Yeah, and therefore? So that's part of the point, right? So theologically, so Jerry's point, our dear representative, is that there's not a problem. Like, it doesn't seem to be a problem, but the rabbis have a problem with it. They make a problem of it, right? Like, they've just expressed all these incredible witnessing of so many things that are gorgeous and beautiful, and they add this diaspora synagogue on the list. And then they say, uh-oh, something's wrong here. The rabbis smell something that they don't like, or they project, right? Like they're projecting an agenda onto the text in order to try to convey something. So the question is, there are many things that could be conveyed. We could spend hours doing this, which we're not going to do. One last. Okay, so maybe it's around diasporic existence, potentially. All right, I think there's a lot to be said about it, right? And the Talmud basically says it's because they, according to what Donna says, they didn't fulfill this thing about not going back. But I think underneath it, there must be something going on, right? Like there's something deeper going on about why they're so disturbed about it. And so I just want to hold that question, right? Like, what is it about the optics, about having a grand synagogue that's functioning extremely well in the place where we were enslaved. That is, it seems to me, at least functioning in some way in a vacuum in Mitzrayim. The place of, according, right, as Jerry said, of where we were slaves. I just hold that. So it seems that they were settled and comfortable in Mitzrayim, and the question is whether that is a good thing, whether we should ever be settled and comfortable in Mitzrayim. And perhaps they don't, who said, I don't remember, it was Joy who said they didn't recognize the narrowness of the place. And they perhaps weren't attentive to the vulnerability of the Mitzrayim right out their door, right? They build this grandiose thing in Mitzrayim, which is not really just a place, but a spiritual state. And how do you build something so grand in the midst of so much narrowness? That's another question. Unlike the grandiosity of Alexandria, there was a moment in our story when there was no building, there was no Mishkan that was considered or even needed. Of course, all of that precedes this week's Parashat. And the Sfat Emet, the Hasidic commentary on this week's Parashat, Terumah, describes the moment when the Israelites were crossing the sea. And he writes, Israel at the sea felt themselves to be vessels, ready to have the Shekhinah poured into them. Thus they said, Ze Eli v'anvehu. This is my God, and I will enshrine them. That's a part of the Shirat Hayam, the Song of the Sea. Meaning, I will make myself into a shrine for God. Essentially, the children of Israel themselves were a foundation for God's dwelling. They were at the sea, according to the Sfat Emet, Mikdashei Me'at, that they were small sanctuaries, ready. I taught this teaching in my class this week. It's such a powerful teaching to imagine coming out of Mitzrayim and at a place where they were filled with so much badness, so much horror, so much narrowness and constriction. And here, according to the Sfat Emet, they say, we will be the shrine for you. What an incredible transformation that when one comes out of Mitzrayim, one could have the awareness that one could be filled up with God's presence. It wasn't until the sin of the golden calf, the Egel HaZahav, that God said, V'asu li mikdash v'shachanti betocham. That's according to Rashi's read. People know that there's like a chronological reversal of the order of events in the Torah that says, Rashi says that the Egel HaZahav, the golden calf, occurs before the construction of the Mishkan, and God's instruction to build the sanctuary, V'asu li mikdash v'shachanti betocham, is an outgrowth of the sin of the golden calf. Let them make me a sanctuary, and only through that will I dwell in them. That they need the sanctuary. The Mishkan is a concession. The Mishkan is a concession. It only appears after rupture, when people can no longer bear the unmediated encounter with God, or when their capacity, because they've sinned, for being a mikdash ma'at, a small sanctuary as human beings in some way, has been lost. The Mishkan is both a merciful gift to create a place for the encounter by God, and it is also at once an expression that has of something that has been forfeited because of the experience of sin. The Sfat Emet, however, is emphatic that the desire is for human beings themselves to become a Mishkan for God. He teaches this teaching, I think, because he is worried in some sense. There's always, we're Jewish, there's always a worry underneath. The rabbis have a worry about that synagogue in Alexandria. And the Sfat Emet, I think, has a worry that too much will be put into the building of the Mishkan, and people will forget that actually it was them who were supposed to be the Mishkan, that they were meant to be the vessels by which God would dwell. And here is the tension we must feel. What happens when our sanctuaries and our institutions become so secure and so magnificent, so complete, that we forget what it was like to stand at the sea, unshielded, unfinished, open to God's presence? Alexandria was praised for its grandeur, for its care of the poor, for its thriving, ordered community, and yet that very beauty carried a hidden danger, according to the rabbis. The people built a home in Mitzrayim, and in doing so risked forgetting their exile, the awareness that holiness must always be carried and never assumed. The Mishkan reminds us that structures are gifts necessary for fragile hearts, but the true dwelling is within human beings, porous enough to hold the Shekhinah, God's dwelling presence, fear, and the suffering of others. And so we are left in the middle of a question, not an answer. What is the purpose of what we build? To gather, of course, we have that blessing every Shabbat, many of us, many times during the week, to be here, to protect us, to feel encapsulated and comforted, and to inspire, I hope, yes. And yet, can the walls we erect, the grandeur we create, quietly make us forget the narrowness of Mitzrayim, the fragility of being vessels, the trembling openness the Savat Emet describes at the sea? Do our sanctuaries and institutions enlarge our moral imagination, training us to carry fear and the suffering of others, or do they allow us to settle, secure in comfort, forgetting what it means to be porous, unfinished, and fragile human beings just out of Mitzrayim? I worry about the Jewish community in this way. When the people of Alexandria built their magnificent synagogue, they were alive with pride, organization, care, and economic dignity, and yet they were in Mitzrayim, in Egypt. When we build, are we building to dwell with God, or are we building to feel at home in a place that is meant to remind us of our own vulnerability? The Mishkan reminds us that structure, according to our tradition, was a merciful gift, but human beings are meant to be the vessels of God. Mikdash, each of us a Mikdash Ma'at. The walls can hold, the gold can shine, and we certainly have that in this very beautiful sanctuary. The chairs can seat thousands, but the presence, the Shekhinah, lives first in the fragile, trembling, open human heart. At the sea, they needed no walls. They were vessels, open, trembling, unfinished, enough to hold the Shekhinah, enough to carry fear, enough to carry each other, bound together in a fragile garment of destiny. The Mishkan came later, after rupture, after loss, after the human vessel had faltered. It is both a gift and a concession, a structure to contain holiness, a mercy for fragile hearts. We too build. We build walls, we build sanctuaries, we build institutions, we organize, we protect, we thrive. And yet the question remains, do our walls make us safe? Or do they make us forget what it feels like to be vulnerable? Do they shelter holiness or shelter us from seeing the suffering of others? Do they enlarge our moral imagination or quietly narrow it? At the sea, there were no chairs, no colonnades, no golden walls, only human beings, unshielded, unfinished, open enough to see God and each other clearly with the indelible imprint of the Creator. Perhaps that is the challenge we carry forward, to build without settling, to protect without insulating, to construct without forgetting the trembling, porous human vessels we are meant to be, and to be a place where God dwells amongst us, each and every one of us, today and tomorrow. Shabbat Shalom.